I want to actually talk about this guy. I lost all my hair in the last 10 years, trying to make it delightful, trying to bring data, design, and delivery. Well, this other guy has probably been working somewhat less harder than me or something. And he's only spent 5 years or so. Maybe in the next 5 years, as he finishes 10 years in this company, we'll hopefully see him. So, but Sunil Potti.
Good job, man. Hi, man. Good job. So, let me see how much time I have, Julie. So we're about 20 minutes behind, so right on time. So if you don't mind, because we are a little squeezed on time and we have a special guest right after this, I'm going to take my Indian talking speed and put it into ludicrous mode, okay? So you guys have seen this slide before about the vision, and when you double-click into it, when you stack our products across the 3 phases of invisible infrastructure, invisible data centers, invisible clouds, the product portfolio obviously has matured quite a bit in the last few years, and especially going from HCI into private cloud, operations, security, and so forth. And then we're, as Dheeraj was saying, in the spirit of ambition and innovation, breaking into cloud services, database services, and so forth. But ultimately, it comes down to adoption. And adoption comes in 2 vectors, as you guys know. One's on covering as many workloads as we can, and secondly, maximizing the value across these products. And hopefully, if you're able to combine both vectors together, we can make a real step into delivering a true cloud experience for our customers. And when you sort of work this into the 3-phase execution plan, Dheeraj called it data, design, and delivery. Core HCI is all about data. A private cloud, true cloud experience inside is all about design. And then, of course, our ambition around innovating on delivery to change the consumption model is where the multi-cloud services come in, okay? And so when you click into the core a bit in the first section, a couple of things to note. Especially in the last 6-9 months, we've sort of had a renewed focus on the core, both from a quality, upgrade, security, and an entire bunch of other capabilities that we have essentially, refocused a lot of our engineering assets there, and hopefully you'll see a lot of that come through in 5.11, 5.12, and so forth. But the innovation has not stopped across the features as well. So take, for example, AHV, which has now surpassed 40% attach nodes, right, every quarter going forward. We were actually at 0 in our first .next in 2015, by the way, right, from an AHV attach. And 4 or 5 years later, 40% of our nodes are now on AHV, okay? And so clearly, from a capability of the core, AOS, Prism, and AHV, there's a lot of emphasis. One thing, though, that we have done over the last few years is to really look hard into what's coming in the next few years in terms of applications being transformed. Everybody knows about cloud native, but there's also a variety of other structural things happening with respect to analytics and databases and so forth. And if you combine that with technology, because you're getting RDMA now, you're getting 3D Crosspoint, so forth, and between the combination of these next-generation apps and technologies coming together in a perfect storm, we took some of our best engineers, our core principal engineers, and tasked them with rewriting our core operating system. And that came out just recently, and you're going to see the first phases of that this year, and then we'll expand on that under the guise of this autonomous extend store, where our entire storage fabric has been rewritten from the ground up to solve for this next-generation technologies and next-generation applications. Sustained write-heavy workloads can now run and sing like we used to do before with traditional workloads. And that has led to a bunch of our applications that otherwise would not have been supported now being certified on Nutanix. SAP HANA, but also this year you're going to see a variety of these packaged applications now being supported. Meditech being one of them. You can name your favorite healthcare application that's coming next and so forth. And a lot of this is just not packaged apps. It's also enabling us to deliver a next-generation database service offering in the form of Era, so that Oracle RAC can actually now be provisioned and deployed and operated as if it's a true one-click database offering. And you're going to hear more of that later today and tomorrow on this. Ultimately, though, when you look at the core, it's now evolved beyond just solving for block storage. It's gone from block storage to unstructured data, files, objects, but also underpinning cloud-native workloads. And we finally came out with Carbon. I know if you guys remember, 3 years ago, we took a left turn when the industry was taking a right turn on Kubernetes. So we corrected direction and then doubled down on Kube. And what you now have is what we're calling enterprise-grade Kubernetes that's fully compatible, that you can now build your next-generation applications co-located with your traditional stacks on the same platform. And to offer unstructured data capabilities, clearly, files is the first type of storage that one has to consume. And the product that you know prior as AFS has evolved. It has come a long way. It's one of our flagship new products now in terms of adoption, thousands of customers already on it. And we're going beyond supporting what I would call table stakes functionality to replace your traditional filers into next-generation innovations, including file analytics, anomaly detection, and a whole bunch of features like that we'll take a look at quickly. And the twin of files in unstructured data is objects. And objects has taken quite a bit of time for us to build, because the scale of objects, as you guys know, has to be at least 100x more than blocks or files. Billions of objects is how we've structured, our buckets offering. I know good news is we're better at building products than naming them. Okay, all right. I can't bring myself to say that name again and again, but hopefully we'll change it one of these days. Structured data, unstructured data, and then we're left with one silo. The one silo that we've always had a point of view on, but we never really had a hyper-converged offering, was backup, and especially its evolution into the cloud for secondary data. So it's my great pleasure to talk about a product that we've been working on behind the scenes for almost a year now, where we are now hyper-converging secondary storage, tertiary storage, including cloud tiering, into a single offering called Nutanix Mine. And the way we've brought this out together is in conjunction with bringing together best-in-class functionality from Prism and AOS with best-in-class backup functionality that has been proven to support thousands of applications out there with our partner Veeam. And to talk more about the partnership, and we'll go into the product a bit more, let me invite the co-founder of Veeam, Ratmir. Come on up on stage, man.
Good morning, Sunil. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. So tell us a little bit about Veeam. I know most people know about it.
First, thank you very much for inviting me on stage.
And you can come closer, man.
It's a great honor to be here today when you are celebrating 10 years of huge success. So I would like to congratulate everybody in the audience for being this great disruptors and builders and innovators in the last 10 years.
You guys have been around for 10 years also, right?
Yes, exactly. So I heard that there are 6,000 people in the audience, correct?
I think a little bit more than that.
A little bit?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah, 7 maybe. Yeah.
7,000. First, it's awesome to be in the audience of the 7,000 Nutanix fans. Woo! I'm very jealous. But I'm sure there are quite a few Veeam fans as well in the audience.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Veeam and Nutanix share a lot in common, right? So we have a similar history. You started about a decade ago, and we're also with the idea to bring the very innovative solutions to our customer that we're going through the data center transformation 10 years ago. So we delivered on that promise, and now we're the respected leaders in both categories. we started as the #1 VMware backup, and now we're moving into the cloud data management. And you started as the, like Dheeraj explained, with the vision of combine the compute and storage and make it very easy and invisible. So creating this new industry of hyper-converged infrastructure. And now you are moving to the building the foundation for the enterprise cloud, as Veeam is moving and building the foundation for data management, data protection, backup in the hybrid cloud environment. So very many things in common. So very excited to be here today.
Great, great. So tell us a little bit. I know you've put a lot of engineering efforts behind Nutanix Mine, and it's a process that started sometime in 2018, early 2018. Tell us a little bit about how you think of Mine.
Yeah, so we started working a couple of years together. First, we released the Veeam backup for HV. That was last year. But in the last 12 months, we realized that our customers are looking for a very simple one-click deployment, powerful secondary storage solution. So that's when we realized that we need to work with a partner like Nutanix, who is also very innovative and focused on the customer needs. That's when the idea came about, and our respective R&D teams started working together about 12 months ago.
Got it, got it. So in Nutanix Mine, by the way, just so that you guys know, what Ratmir is talking about, beyond just Veeam supporting HV and all that good stuff, it's actually a core development effort that started 12 plus months ago that actually fuses Veeam as a native first-class service into the AOS fabric. So all the way from your coding, sizing, deployment, provisioning, into day and operations and support, it looks, feels like a native first-class citizen, just like any other service inside Nutanix. Right. So thanks for all the help,
Yep.
by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I believe our joint partners, our joint customers are looking forward for these solutions. And I heard that the early beta feedback was overwhelmingly positive in terms of the simplicity and performance. So I'm very much looking forward to releasing this solution later this year.
Excellent, man. Thanks a lot, Ratmir.
Thank
Good
you.
stuff, buddy. And the way that we built Mine obviously is classical and Nutanix. It's about customer choice, but adding that true one-click goodness to do it right. So as we built Mine with Veeam, we also partnered with a few other close collaborators, such as Haiku, as well as Veritas and Commvault and so forth, so that Mine is going to be delivered as a platform with the choice of multiple backup services offerings without compromising on the one-click goodness. Okay, so more on this as you guys take a look at it in the show floor as well as the breakout sessions. And then to talk about some of these products, I know you've not come to see me, but you've come to see Steve Poitras, the author of the Nutanix Bible. So without any further ado, let's bring up Steve on stage. Come on up, Steve.
How you doing, buddy?
So this time, we wanted to change it up a little bit because Steve's now works in HR. He doesn't work in our engineering group anymore. It's true, by the way. And so he can change his title whenever he wants. So I thought I'll take the liberty to share with you guys what these guys address themselves with inside the company. We don't call Steve or Steve Poitras or chubby guy or whatever, but we, he calls himself the dude at Nutanix.com. True story, by the way. I mean, some of you guys know this, right? So that's his email address from many years ago. And I've always wondered as to who would be his inspiration, right? Obviously, it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody. It has to be this guy. So since Friday, we took the liberty to go find something. All right. So be nice to him. He's going to be wearing the sweater and doing the demo, looking cool. Be happy. I know it's going to be hot, man, while you're doing the demo.
It's going to be pretty hot.
But be happy that I couldn't find those pajamas, by the way. Okay. All right, let's do the demo.
All right, let's get to it.
Okay. So what are we looking at, Steve?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about was one Nutanix fabric across all of your workloads. And one of the things we've made investments into the last few years is all about unstructured data. And as mentioned previously, unstructured data is really about two core types, files and objects. So with Nutanix Files, we provide enterprise-class multi-protocol file services, all on that same Nutanix platform. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've actually enhanced this with something what we call file analytics. And the key thing is really about three core areas. The first being all about intelligence. Tell me data about the data being stored in the platform. So here we can see our file analytics user interface. And in the top left-hand corner, we can actually view detailed information in regards to the files being added and removed from the platform. We can also view detailed information in regards to the data aging. Do I have a lot of newer data? Is my data getting older? As well as the associated information and details in regards to the types of data being stored in the platform.
So this is all good data and obviously details. How about actual actionable stuff, man, where you can actually show insights versus just data?
Yep. Yeah, so if you think about operations and how this has kind of changed the past few years, it's really moved from a standard continual monitoring perspective to more of an event or anomaly-based nature. So when things are going good, don't actually alert me, but when something out of the ordinary occurs, then that should be a trigger or an event for me to look further. So here within File Analytics, I can actually see anomaly alerts. So we can see this user, my good friend, Mr. Sunil.
Yeah, you got to laugh at his jokes, okay?
No, I don't try to make jokes. I try to keep it professional.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Hey, keep going, man.
But here we can see that Sunil is actually trying to access this document which he doesn't have access to. We can also see he's deleted an abnormal amount of documents. So this could be something that we would actually want to trigger and look deeper into. Now, when we actually want to see that trigger and dive deeper, that leads me to the third point, which is all about auditability or audit trails. So we see here Sunil was trying to access this SB Jedi audition file. We can actually search for this file here. And once we search, we can view the audit. So with this audit, we can see every single operation that's been performed on this file since its creation all the way throughout its life cycle.
So basically, cradle-to-grave reporting now is built into the product.
Yep.
Good stuff, man.
Exactly.
So that's files. What about objects?
Yeah, and obviously the second piece there is all about objects. So with Nutanix buckets, obviously we provide native object-based storage all on that same platform. And last year what I showed you was how simple it was to deploy. In a matter of a few clicks, a few wizards, and tutorials, it'll actually step you through the process to have a full object instance deployed. Now, one of the biggest things here is all about scale. So here I have a existing Nutanix objects deployment where I'm hosting around 1 petabyte of storage capacity. This is also facilitating 2 billion objects today. And this is actually just a relatively small deployment. So when we think about objects and buckets, it's really built for that huge, extreme, massive scale. The second piece there is all about security. So if I go into my buckets deployment, obviously I have native encryption support. I have all the access control and RBAC capabilities, as well as things like versioning and lifecycle management. Now, that was files and objects. The third piece there is all about secondary data. What am I doing in regards to backup and archive? And that's where Nutanix Mine comes into play. With Nutanix Mine, we combine the power of Nutanix, the scalability, the resiliency, and the performance you're used to for your primary workloads with the backup capabilities and feature sets that backup partners and vendors provide. So this is my Nutanix Mine user interface. As you can see, this is a fully integrated solution where I can view detailed information regarding my new Nutanix Mine deployment. So here I can actually see detailed health statistics on the Veeam side of things, as well as the Mine platform.
And this is about, just to be clear, this is about a net new interface that we have to build into Prism so that we can converge the operations across secondary services, right?
Yep, exactly. And the second key portion with this is all about one platform for all of my backup needs. So not only can this back up your Nutanix virtual machines, with Nutanix Mine partnering with our backup vendors, we can now provide one backup solution that not only backups Nutanix, but also my physical and bare metal hosts, as well as any non-Nutanix virtual machines. So one backup platform for all of my workloads, environment-wide.
Awesome. Awesome, man.
And I can also view detailed information regarding things like capacity utilization. One of the key things here is the scalability, right? So here I can see my source environment. These are essentially the targets that I'm backing up. I can see their utilized storage as well as their provisioned storage. I can also view detailed information in regards to how much capacity is being leveraged on the Mine platform. Now, scalability is a key thing here, so we also provide the ability to back up or tier down to an archival tier. So in this scenario, we are actually leveraging Nutanix buckets to provide long-term archival-based storage.
Well, good stuff. That's the end-to-end data fabric, and that's the Steve Poitras show. You can email him at thedude@nutanix.com.
It is actually my real email.
All right, man.
Thank you,
Good
Sunil.
stuff. And so that was those are the product list and so forth. And obviously, the proof is the pudding in terms of adoption. And to talk about adoption, a great pleasure to invite one of our favorite customers and partners and collaborators from HCA, Joshua. I don't know where you are, man. Come on up. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Sunil. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about HCA.
Sure. HCA is a healthcare company. We operate at over 400 points of care. We're probably best known for our 180 plus hospitals that we operate across the South and Southwest.
Got it. And how did the journey with Nutanix start in general?
Well, the journey with Nutanix started, I think, like a lot of your other customers. We had a couple of great engineers in our divisions that looked at this new product. They came out and said, hey, we need to do something a little bit different with the way that we're delivering infrastructure. And they started ordering nodes in a couple of our divisions to put some workloads on, try it out. After that, it kind of got a life of its own. We then started using it in some of our facilities to be able to provide a landing spot for applications that have to live within those facilities. Later, we implemented VDI, and as you can see here, we've really started to do a lot of different use cases with the product set. Recently, we deployed our private cloud implementation on the Nutanix product. So.
Got it. And how's the journey so far, and some of the plans maybe going forward?
Yeah, the journey's been good. You know, one of the biggest things that we wanted to accomplish with the product was to get a consistent, scalable infrastructure so that we didn't have to deal with multiple versions of hardware and dealing with what that entails from an operational perspective. So what we've been able to do is really consolidate a lot of our workloads on a standard set of equipment, and then be able to bring that consistency across a wider base of our workloads across our data centers.
Got it. And HCI, I know, started small, has come a long way, right, with respect to deployment.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, today I think we're running, I don't know the exact node count, I guess there's probably some numbers up here, but we're running this for several thousand of our VMs across our deployments, whether that's in a shared infrastructure deployment that we're planning, or whether that's for our VDIs, our PAC systems, et cetera. So yeah, we've come a long way with what we're doing, and we're excited to continue that journey.
Great stuff, man. Thanks a lot for your support,
yeah,
as always.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Thank
Joshua.
you.
So that was core, obviously single fabric across all workloads. And we talk about elevating core, HCI, into a true private cloud experience. And one of the parallels that we tend to draw inside engineering is the fact that, okay, if you're in the Bay Area these days, everything's about autonomous driving and all that good stuff. And there's a good parallel, actually, that applies to data centers as it applies to the emerging, you know, if I can call it evolution from automated driving to autonomous driving. And if you think about a Tesla, it's probably in what they call level 2, going to level 3, even though Elon shows demos of level 6, which doesn't exist on the slide yet. But primarily, it's about using intelligence. Initially, it's about automation, some sensors, self-parking. Eventually, though, they want to bring enough intelligence into the car so that when you go home, park the car in the garage, have dinner with the family, the car is able to register itself on Uber, drive itself out, make some money for you, and park itself back, right? I didn't make that up, by the way. That's part of the vision. And so I don't know if data centers would do that for you, but there is a level of synergy there where we were in relatively low automation in three-tier land. We've come a long way, right, in the last generation, I would say, of technologies. And we are somewhere in level 3 here with cloud data centers, reasonable automation. And part of our inspiration and ambition is to actually push the bar to get to the next level of intelligence. And that's really why, if you look at our product strategy around Prism Pro, Calm, and Flow in particular, is that as you move up the levels to go to autonomic driving, autonomic data centers, you have to prioritize safety. You have to prioritize safety, right? More so than intelligence. And so that's why we're doubling down on security this year, as you will see with Flow, but we've also gotten an all-new product where Veeam, which hopefully you guys have gotten a version of the cloud usage report. The guys actually came here at 5:30 a.m., woke everybody up, placed those things on your seats there. Some really good work by Veeam on multi-cloud usage. Now we're bringing that power of compliance to on-prem for our Nutanix environment. And to talk about the full power of, if I can call it this, autonomous data centers, let's invite our other favorite presenter, Rajiv, on stage. Okay? Rajiv, come on up.
What's up, man?
Good. We're clocking a good speed. So obviously, Rajiv also has a Slack handle. It used to be called Rajiv Mirani, and then he changed it to the full Mirani. Okay? Not for the reasons that you might be thinking of, nothing related to full Monty or whatever, but somewhat related. This is Dheeraj's photo of him. This is Dheeraj taking a picture of Rajiv taking a picture of the cherry blossoms in Japan when there was a full moon in a day or something like that. So only Dheeraj can make those jokes. So this is a Dheeraj joke. If you have to laugh for it, just laugh for it, okay? So, all right, full Mirani, what do we have to talk about today?
All right, can we switch to the demo screen? Right, so
What?
I keep forgetting. Is that your Slack handle or is that your
Get that off the screen.
Twitter handle?
Let's get in the demo.
Or is
man.
it that one?
Yeah, no, it's not that one. It's not that one. All right,
All right.
thank you.
So,
All right. He just showed it to me like 5 minutes before the show started.
right. No response, huh? Okay, anyway.
Just enjoy his last keynote demo presentation. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right, let's make it good then.
Yeah.
So, how do you drive a self-driving car? You essentially need some notion of policy, where you want to go, how far above the speed limit you want to drive, and you need sensors and feedback. How's traffic flowing around you, are your tire pressures up to spec, and so on. And in many ways, data centers are similar. We need policy and we need sensors and feedback. Now, policies in the data center will be a lot more complicated, especially when it comes to things like regulatory compliance. So as Sunil said, we are extending Veeam to cover not just public cloud, but also extend into the enterprise data centers with Nutanix clusters. And let's take a look at that. So I have a Veeam dashboard over here. It's covering about 16 different cloud accounts at this point. So just covered a few issues. These accounts have AWS, Azure, and also our Nutanix corporate IT data center in Phoenix being monitored. And if I wanted to look at what's happening with one of these clusters, I just go into our Nutanix cluster over here. This particular application that I'm running on this cluster is a payment application, so I've configured Veeam to run PCI DSS checks. There's 200 overall checks that are being run. Things like whether we have a good firewall configuration, whether we're using vendor default passwords. And within each of these sections, there's a fair number of checks that happen. So for example, one of them is whether sensitive databases are being protected from being exposed on the public internet. And we see we have some issues over here. We have 5 errors. And one of our databases, actually 2 of our databases, a prod database and a dev database, have their TCP ports open. Now, that's obviously a problem. We want to secure that. And in the old days, we would just put a perimeter firewall around this, right? But we can do better than that. We have advanced a little bit beyond that era now. What we can do is put a flow policy to microsegment these databases. So let's switch over to flow. So this is a view into the cluster, and I have a bunch of VMs running on the cluster. First thing I want to do is visualize the traffic. How are these VMs talking to each other? Now, it turns out I do have my two databases here, dev database and production database.
And this is, by the way, coming with our Epoch integration into Flow, right?
Exactly. This visualization is from Epoch. This is the NetCell technology that we acquired last year. But as you can see, the way these databases are being accessed is through VDI desktops. I have a bunch of VDI desktops, all of which are accessing both the dev and production databases. And this would be pretty normal in a VDI environment, depending on, I have a VDI farm. Depending on when I log in, I might be assigned a different desktop. I do what I need to do, but other people will use it at other times. So a simple policy here is not going to work. A policy that's based simply on the VM identity is not going to work. So we've actually extended Flow to take user centricity into account. So if I go into the security policies here, I can look at the policy I've set up for VDI. And this is now based on Active Directory groups. So for people in the marketing Active Directory group, we give them access to file servers. Obviously, marketing should have no access to databases. Our Xi reliability engineers, the XREs, have access to both dev and production databases, while engineering has access only to dev databases, not to the production ones. So this policy is currently in monitor mode. So I have a little application here that I'm running, and it's in the background essentially making database queries against both these databases. Production results on the left, development on the right. And at the moment, because the policy is in monitor mode, both of them are going through. So let's go ahead and switch over to enforcement mode. I'll apply the policy. We go ahead with that. And now, as the application makes more queries, we should start seeing it getting blocked. And I'm logged in here as a developer, as an engineer, not as an XRE. So I should not have access to the production database, but I should continue to have access to the development database. And this will take just a few seconds before that kicks in.
And all of this is something that obviously runs on AHV just because we have control over the AHV stack from an API perspective and so forth. Right?
Exactly. So it's all being done in the Open vSwitch, fully distributed. Policies migrate with the VMs and all that. And as you can see, we can no longer access the production database.
All right. So that's Floor.
Wait, hang on. There's
Yeah.
one more thing.
OK, there's one more thing. Man, we're running out of time.
Remember, I've been asking about this promotion to an XRE. You keep putting that off.
Do I have a choice?
No, you don't.
OK.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a little script over here. It's going to actually edit my Active Directory credentials on the fly right now. It's going to add me to the XRE group. So as an XRE, I should now have access to the production database. And as you can see, Flow detects that. And now within the same desktop, with no other changes, just a change to Active Directory, I have access to the production database again.
Yeah. One-click microsegmentation in action. So that's Flow.
That's Flow. So the other thing that we have shown many times at .next conferences before is Prism Pro, and specifically our CrossFit algorithm, our machine learning algorithm, that we have used in the past to power a whole bunch of different capabilities, things like capacity planning, what-if modeling, dynamic alerts. But we have done this at the infrastructure level. One thing that we decided to do was that if you really want a self-driving data center, if you really want sensors to reach across the entire stack, you have application-level sensors too, right? So what we've done is we have taken our CrossFit algorithm, opened it up via APIs to third-party vendors to integrate into it, so we can now consume application-level.
So basically, we're going beyond infrastructure visibility to now bringing application visibility in a fused way with Prism Pro. And this is leveraging a bunch of partner technologies, including Blue Medora,
including
bring
right?
a whole bunch of these prepackaged application sensors into the Prism Pro umbrella.
Right. And since I'm an XRE now, I need to go check PagerDuty every now and then. And as you can see, I've already gotten a PagerDuty alert saying that one of our databases, the amount of time SQL queries are taking, has shot up. And I can click into that, view it in Prism. And while Prism loads, because this is all integrated with Blue Medora, we actually already have a whole bunch of sources available for these application-level metrics. We have VDI desktops, we have SQL databases, NoSQL databases, even cloud platforms. So we're spanning a fairly large set of applications right off the bat. If I go and look at the SQL query over here, hang on, second. Let me reload that.
And this would be about looking at, say, a database latency in this particular case, right?
That's right.
And
So
a
in
bunch
this
of
particular
applications.
case, it's a production database that's showing higher latencies. Just a second over here.
So this is what happens when you make jokes about me, man.
There you go.
Demos
Just give
don't
me a
work.
second.
Okay, it works. All right.
All right. So as you can see, we did see a spike in latency earlier today. I can go look at details. And what CrossFit now does is shows me the latency, but also shows me other anomalous events that were happening at around the same time. At higher disk byte usage, at lower cache hit ratio, and CPU usage also spiked. Now, we're talking about latencies going high. That's probably related to the cache hit ratio going down at that point. So why would this happen? I can look at what was happening on the system at that point. I can look at what kind of queries were running. The number of queries, the number of connections, it's been up and down, but nothing significant over here. I can see what kind of queries were running. And here there's something interesting. I have a transaction report. CrossFit has detected it's a new kind of query. We haven't seen it before. And it takes about 200 milliseconds to run, which is why our latencies may have shot up, because the cache, that's flushing out the cache. So what do? We want to continue running this query in the future. So the easiest thing to do at this point would be to increase the size of the database instance. And we can do that using our playbooks. So this is a new capability we've added to Prism Pro called XPlay or Crossplay. And it lets you create custom playbooks that can be run either in response to events, automatically when an alert happens, or manually.
So basically like IFTTT, but for the enterprise. Right?
Exactly. IFTTT for the enterprise sums it up perfectly. So I just happen to have a playbook that will increase the size of the database instance and then slack me when it succeeds. So let me go ahead and run that. And looks like it's been successful. So if I switch over to Slack, yeah, you can see I got the notification on Slack that the playbook was successfully.
All right, good stuff, Rajiv.
Thanks, man.
Thank you again.
All right.
All right. So, so that was the second act. And then to talk more about how this has actually taken his data center, the entire environment, to become, I won't call it a full autonomous data center yet, but a much smarter data center than what it was before. A great privilege to invite Troy on stage. Come on up, Troy. I tried getting a hairstyle like that, but it didn't work out. So tell us a little bit about Emerson.
Oh, so Emerson is a global manufacturing and technology services leader in their space with a very dispersed workforce around the world. And with that growth that we've had through the years and on into the future, growth does bring complexity to our environment from an IT perspective, which is really what drove us to a hyper-converged Nutanix type of solution.
Got it. And then tell us a little bit about, obviously you started small with Nutanix, you had a traditional, three-tier, vBlock, vStack kind of architecture. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be where you are.
Yeah, so in late 2017, we went on a journey to deliver a turnkey solution that had a holistic approach from a whole stack perspective, which drove us to a hyper-converged Nutanix solution that we looked at specifically for our robo edge deployments within our business. After looking at that and deciding that that's really what we wanted to do is go forward with Nutanix, we also took a step back and looked at it from a data center perspective. Where does it best fit in our data center? And we found that it really fits well in where we're going and what we want to do from a cost perspective, a simplicity perspective, and really just a production, ease of use, and scale model. So we've, in the last, actually, I think the numbers are here, in the last probably 2 months, we've delivered and migrated over 450 workloads over to Nutanix within our general global data centers.
450 workloads. Great job, man. Great job.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. Easier said than done. So obviously you've talked about simplification, consistency. I mean, tell us some material outcomes.
So
beyond getting promoted.
Yeah. Again, the main driver was simplicity. I mean, we have to make things very simple. We don't want to go in the rears and go with complexity, so we're going forward with really very simple delivery. And that's really from our edge perspective and in-house GDC today. We needed to deliver a ease of use, ease of management, easily scalable model that can be universal in a single pane of glass type of situation. It's important for our business to be able to thrive and grow as they need, and IT does not want to be in the way of doing that. We want to be able to allow that to happen, and with this technology, it allows us to get there with really good versatility and agility.
Got it. And he's one of the guys, by the way, if you ever find him, buy him a drink, he'll tell you about how he's not only virtualized compute storage and all that stuff, but he's actually one of the earliest adopters of fully building these pods that virtualize the network too, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we haven't stopped there. What we've done is we went forward with looking at where do we take advantage of calm in the environment and where it makes sense, right? We have other orchestration and automation tools and techniques, but where does that work? And then when from a flow perspective, we're looking at where does that make sense from a Nutanix global data center and within probably more so in our business, at our business edge sites. So we're looking at taking advantage of a lot of different of the features and functions.
Good stuff, Troy.
Yep.
Thanks again.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
So the second act obviously was about, this evolution of software-defined data centers. In our vernacular, at least inside the company, we call them, self-driving data centers. And that's our ambition, at least, to get to a true cloud experience inside. And then, last but not least, as we innovate with our ambition to get into the multi-cloud era, and in this, decade of multi-cloud services, it will probably take that long to get there. We have a variety of services. And you'll hear a chunk of them later today, as well as in the keynote tomorrow, between Leap, IoT, as well as Enera, and so forth. But one particular thing I wanted to highlight today was the fact that beyond the multi-cloud services that we're offering over the top, something foundational needs to happen to solve for the multi-cloud era. And what we mean by that is something similar to what we did with hyperconvergence on infrastructure has to be applied to the world of hybrid, right? And it can't just be a control plane problem. It has to be a combination of control plane and data plane. And the word that we use to describe that underpinning technology that needs to get done is app mobility. And to talk about this app mobility construct that we are now releasing in the wild now with this all-new technology called Move, it's my pleasure to invite Laura on stage. Coming up, Laura. Thank you. So many of you might know Laura from, she's one of our earliest engineers. She actually took a sabbatical. One of these days, some of us will all do that. But she took a sabbatical. She created a site called Wine and Passports. And go check it out. And she toured the world. We won't pester her with all the obvious questions of what was the worst country that she visited and all that, outside of India, of course. But
they were all great.
OK. So what are you talking about app mobility? Tell us a little
Awesome.
bit about the problem.
Cool. So typically when we're talking about hybrid environments, we're talking about applications that are living both on-prem and in the cloud. And typically the challenge has always been, once I have that data in the cloud and those applications in the cloud, which in and of itself it's hard, it's even harder to actually get that data back out if we need to. So what we're going to show today is how we're able to simplify that with Nutanix Move integrated into Calm itself.
Got it.
So if I drill down into my system here, I see I have a couple applications running. And in the interest of time, we've kicked off a migration on one of my service applications here. And we can see it's actually running in AWS Cloud with the IP address, the public IP, and the AMI instance information. And if we actually jump into the application itself, we can see that it's basically our fantasy basketball app. And we need to make some picks. We're in the middle of the playoffs. And we'll need to make some picks to, see who's going to be in the finals. So I'm gonna pick the Warriors, being from the Bay Area. And Sunil, who do you want to pick?
I mean, I don't know. I don't play or follow basketball. I guess we'll pick the military.
Military, okay. Milwaukee, yeah.
Oh, Milwaukee. Yeah.
Interesting choice.
Same
Awesome.
thing.
Cool.
Same thing. All right, keep going. Yeah.
Cool. So these pics will persist on the AWS app. And if I just jump into my running migration here and do a quick cutover. All right, so we've done the cutover. So to take a couple steps back and talk about kind of what I just did there, to look at another app we have as an example, it's a similar app running in AWS. This one actually has 3 services. Again, we can see the AWS cloud and the IP and the AMI instance information. So we can easily deploy applications into AWS with COM, but again, the difficulty has always been how do we get them back out? So what we've done is we've integrated a migrate button directly into COM here. So once you click it, we're leveraging Nutanix Move on the back end from COM, and we're specifying our source application running in the cloud, and then our destination profile is AHV. And then we specify that cutover time, and that's when we actually want that target application to be live on our target environment. And so that's what we've just initiated on that other app that I showed. If we click next here, we can see the kind of visual representation of our app. The left-hand side shows it running on AWS, and then the corresponding services that would look like running on AHV. And we can also see a cost comparison here, so we can see that migrating this particular app on-prem actually saves us money due to the workload profile.
Okay. So that's obviously Move integrated with COM. Before we do any cutovers in general, obviously people would like to actually assess the cost.
Right, of course. So people aren't going to just be migrating without a plan. They're not backpacking through Central America with no plan like I was for a while. So with applications, we actually want to make a plan. So users typically you guys want to assess your environment and kind of see what your data is doing so you can make decisions based on that data. So that's where Veeam comes into play. So Veeam allows us that visibility into our environments across both cloud and on-prem, as we can see here. So we can see our cloud spend across AWS, Azure, as well as Nutanix on-prem. We can see our spend over time. And more importantly, we also get a workload analysis. So Veeam's actually making recommendations for us where it's telling us we have 10 workloads, and 5 of those actually would need to be migrated off to get some cost savings. 3 of them could be optimized, basically stay where they are, but there's some optimizations we can do. And then 2 we can just leave as is. So if I drill down further into this, we get a kind of an overview of all of our workloads. And for example, our Archaeus app that we saw previously is here, and then as well as some other apps we have registered. So for example, if I look at one of these apps that's asking, recommending we optimize it, we can see it's running on AWS, and Veeam is recommending we keep it on AWS, but there's actually some optimizations that we can do. And since we can see that workload pattern as well is very dynamic, so that makes it a great use case for the public cloud. But again, if we click optimize, we can see some unused resources and some things we can actually clean up. So we can do that all directly from within Veeam, so that will save us even more money.
Awesome.
Yep. And if I actually jump back to that app, the Archaeus app, we can look at that and we can see it's a very flat-lined app. There's not a lot of workload dynamics there. It's pretty static. So that makes it very good for on-prem. And we've integrated also the migrate button directly into Veeam, so you can actually kick off that migration workflow directly from there as well.
Got it. And that's just a teaser into how we're bringing hybrid cloud ops into one integrated offering between COM, Veeam, Epoch, and a bunch of other things associated with Nutanix Move. So while this is going on, maybe we want to spend some time on what's actually underpinning the Move technology.
Yep, yeah. So it's essentially a 4-step process. So the first thing we do is we actually do a discovery, right? So we discover everything that's running in AWS or on the public cloud, and we take an inventory of what that application is comprised of. So we have different EC2 instances with a certain CPU and memory footprint, and then we map that to the corresponding what it would look like in AHV. So if you have like an M4 extra large or a T2 medium, that's going to map to a specific CPU and memory footprint on the AHV side, as well as we take into account, of course, the networking and the storage. Then the second thing we do is we actually provision into AHV using those numbers, so the kind of count of VMs and then the sizes of those VMs. And then the third part is actually the hard part. That's the part where we actually have to migrate all that data over. And so the way we do that is we do essentially a smart sync, or we've integrated a change block tracking driver into the software that will actually manage the changes. So once that first initial sync is done, if there's any changes that are done before the cutover, they also need to be migrated. But we're not migrating the entire VM. So if we have like a 1 terabyte or 500 gig VM, it's not going to be feasible to actually copy all that data over every time.
And I think that's an important point. I know that on on-prem VMs and technologies, obviously we have change block tracking CBT, but there is no CBT in AWS, for example, right? And that's one of the core innovations of Nutanix Move, was to create that layers that allows us that freedom to kind of move back and forth. Yeah.
Yep. So now we can see that our cutover is actually completed here. It's running here on the Nutanix cloud with an internal IP address. And so if we actually jump into it, should have our picks from that we picked earlier. So.
All right, that's the app that's migrated back. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Final leg. One more thing, of course. And Dheeraj talked about this, right? Obviously, as we are evolving into a multi-dimensional roadmap across location, services, and so forth, the evolution of the company obviously has come a long way from having an opinionated stack, running a Supermicro, evolving to supporting our own hypervisor in addition to other hypervisors and so forth. And all along this journey, though, as we have evolved with partners, and to sort of like create unique 1 + 1 = 3 kind of value propositions along the way, the biggest thing that we've done with our cloud partner GCP has been that rather than just plop ourselves as a power-sucking alien inside somebody's data centers, what we've done is actually work closely with them to actually engineer something called as nested virtualization, which allows Nutanix AOS to run as a first-class citizen, just like a GCP VM, including networking being solved, so that we can actually, or in the future, run Nutanix natively as a GCP service. And what we're launching now is Xi Test Drive, is essentially the underpinning for any POC that you might be doing as partners or customers. Under the cover is actually running on GCP. Most of our initial R&D, testing, release management, everything is now being done on GCP nested virtualization and so forth. So this will be a big new way for us to actually distribute or deliver Nutanix as a service in the future. That was one approach, obviously, that we've done with our partner GCP. The other approach that customers have come to us is that with the adoption of public clouds, especially with bare metal coming up as a first-class citizen, the other major announcement that we wanted to talk about today is that we've, very happy to announce, and Binny's going to come up and talk about the work that he's been doing for the last almost a year with a core team dedicated, working with AWS to actually make Nutanix available on AWS bare metal. And to talk about that, let's call Binny on stage.
Hey, Sunil, how are you?
All right. Binny, once a year for the demo, he dusts off the suit that his mother-in-law gave him for his marriage, right, as you can see.
Where's yours?
So make sure you pay some compliments. Now, Binny, on the other hand, doesn't have a Slack handle. He just works. He's a pretty serious dude, one of the 2 CTOs that we have between him and Rajiv and so forth. So I just thought, we'll just give you a name, Binny, right? In the spirit of giving him a Slack handle, hopefully that'll stick. We'll just call you Biggie Man, okay? All right. So what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, actually,
with respect to AWS.
I'm funny, but you don't get my jokes.
Okay, okay.
What are we going to talk about? 2 things, all right? One is customers want to expand the data centers, but they don't want to buy capacity, right? That's one problem to solve. The other is you want to move your applications to the cloud, but you don't want to change your app. These are hard problems. We have a solution. We call it Xi clusters. It's basically Nutanix clusters running on AWS, but there are 2 key things to understand about it. First is you can use their existing credits, existing account with AWS, VPN, direct connectivity, all the investment that you have done with AWS accounts, you can use that. Second, when you're running inside that account, Nutanix is running inside that account, you get access to native networking speeds between workloads on Nutanix and workloads on Nutanix talking to AWS native services. right? That comes because of the work that we have done with the AWS networking layer.
All right.
So let me show
Let's
you,
take a look.
right?
Yeah.
So here on the screen you have Prism Central. This is Prism Central on premises that I have, and this is a classic problem. Use case number 1, right? I have a cluster on premises, and it's running out of capacity, right? So I'm launching a bunch of desktops. I only have 26 days left. I have 2 options. I can buy more hardware, add it. Now with Nutanix, it's easy. But what if I don't want to do that, or maybe I want to globally expand? Here's how you do it. This is the easiest way with Xi clusters. So I log into my Nutanix account. This is the account that I already have. And here's a list of services that Nutanix offers. The new one is Xi clusters. I launch that. First thing you see is a world map. This is the view of all the regions where AWS bare metal is supported. And you can launch Xi clusters on any one of these. Right? So let me show you how you do that. Let me pick Oregon, because that's where I already have VPN direct connectivity set up because of my other workloads. I hit Create Cluster. I just give it a name. Say Demo 15. I pick the software of AOS that I want to run, host type, bare metal, number of hosts, 3, 4, whatever. I can start with 3, expand later. And here I'm telling it what's the IP addresses from where I'll access this cluster. So we take that and pre-program the security groups in AWS so that the cluster comes up and it is secure, right? So I hit Save. And this is the important point to note. It gives me a link to launch a CloudFormation, and you'll see what it means. Let me launch that. It's taking me to another tab and asking me to log in using my own existing AWS account. So we are not doing any back-end creation of accounts. It's your AWS account. You log in, and you see that the same form appears. This is a CloudFormation template, whatever I had given. It asks one additional question, which is, who will be the admin, the AWS user, who will be the admin of this cluster? I pick my name, acknowledge, and I click Create. So that's it. In 30 seconds, I have actually started launching a cluster. And I go back to Xi cluster, say I launched it, and click on clusters, and there's Demo 15. It's initializing. And it'll take about 30 minutes to come up. So that's how simple it is now to expand your on-premises into the cloud globally.
Binny just showed, just so that you guys know, he just showed creating cluster with no hardware procurement, no networking, just spun up so that it can be available 30 minutes from now.
And it's
right?
in your existing AWS account.
Good stuff, man. Let's talk a little bit about the capabilities as to how we built this as a more genuine offering.
Right. So I do have a cluster here called AWS, which has been running for a few weeks. I won't wait for the cluster to come up that I just spun up. So I'm logging into this cluster. Now, this is identical to a cluster that you have on premises that you know. This is Prism Element. And as you see, the only difference that you'll find is the hardware model. It says AWS, right? Other than that, everything is the same. I can register this to a Prism Central. Now, I can launch a Prism Central on this cluster, or I can connect it to the Prism Central I already had, right? So that Prism Central showed that I'm running out of capacity. I want to add this additional capacity there. I use the password that I use for that Prism Central. So in a few seconds, it basically registers that cluster in the cloud to the Prism Central on premises. And that happens because the VPN direct connectivity, whatever you have is already there. It's running within your AWS account, all right? So let me take you to Prism Central. This is where the problem was of capacity, right? So look at VMs there, and I see 26 VMs. Let me group them by cluster, and you'll see I see 2 clusters now, not just 1, 2. One is the AWS cluster, and one is the cluster that's running out of capacity, right? OK, now this is hybrid cloud view, and I want to show you how you can leverage it. Assume that there are some seasonal workers that are coming in. I need to give them desktops, right? I have Citrix desktop deployed on premises. Let me launch the console there. And here you see Citrix, to save time, we've already configured it with the AWS cluster. The point here is any third-party integration over the last many years just works. I mean, this software that we are building just released, but Citrix works with it, right? So I can click on Add Machines, say about I need 10 more desktops. So you can instruct Citrix Studio to go create additional desktops here.
Additional desktops, OK.
Right. So let me wait for this to spin up.
So essentially, through console, we launched Citrix Studio. And then through Citrix Studio, we're spinning up, say, 10 desktop VMs.
Yeah, and I'm using default options here. And just with a few clicks, I've instructed Citrix Studio. Now, Citrix is running on premises. Usually, it deploys desktops on premises. Now, it's able to deploy it in the cloud. Let me show you. So you go to Prism Central here. And as you can see already, I see some VMs showing up there.
Got it.
This is Citrix on-premise deploying burst capacity into the cloud.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Good stuff. What about, obviously, enterprise-grade capabilities of a Nutanix cluster on AWS as compared to, say, security policies?
Yeah, so when you're now expanding and opening up to the cloud, you have to think about security. It's very important. So for example, here I have an Exchange VM. This is my production VM. Using microsegmentation, I have protected it against some test VMs that could be deployed by any developer. Now, I would like to show you what happens if you deploy something in the cloud, say this test VM. Let me log in there. And I'll try to sort of launch a ping attack or something on my Exchange VM on-prem. So I have a script that does that. So it's pinging. As you see, the latency is about 47 or so. This is from the cloud going back to on-prem.
Right. So he's pinging from his VM in AWS, Nutanix clusters, to a couple of VMs on-premise.
Yeah, I'm pinging the Exchange VM. Now, I do have a security policy protecting. That's supposed to protect the Exchange VM. But if you notice, it's in monitoring mode right now. It's not enforced. So what it does is it shows in blue what's expected. And in yellow, it shows things that are not expected. Now, as you see, the 172.31, that IP address is the test VM IP address. If I want to stop doing, stop those extraneous network connections, I can apply my policy now, right? So when I apply, it basically strictly enforces. This is flow security that we all use with AHV on premises. Now, if you go back to the test VM, look at the latest pings, now it's disabled. So now you can do flow security, not just on the private cloud, but in the hybrid cloud. Just like on-prem, there is no need for overlay networking, VXLAN, edge gateways, and stuff like that. The same thing is true in the cloud. The way we have done the engineering, there's no overlay, no edge gateways, no controllers needed, none of that nonsense.
And no need for 7 consoles or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? OK, let's talk about some innovative new functions as well that we have built while we were delivering this.
Right. So think about the seasonal workers coming in. I've given them desktops. Now, after some time, they want to go, and maybe they'll come back next quarter, next year, whatever. So we thought about that, got good feedback from our customers, and we've invented a new feature, which is essentially first of a kind in the industry, called hibernate and resume the whole cluster. Right? Let me show you. So this is the AWS cluster, and I can hit hibernate. What hibernate does is it looks at the bare metal and takes each disk, eliminates the zeros and dedupe, compress, all of that. Just your real data is backed up to S3, right? And maybe a few hours later, days later, weeks, months, years later, you say, I want it back. And then you hit resume. So I have a hibernated cluster here. I can click on that and hit resume. All I need to do is to power on the bare metal instances, and you'll have your cluster back.
Got it. So this is about taking your Nutanix cluster now can become much more fungible based on your workload needs. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome.
So that basically gives you the benefit of cloud, the true elasticity that cloud brings in, while preserving all your IT operations and everything. So now you can expand your data center, on-premises data center to the cloud and shrink as you need. So that's the first use case.
So that was the first use case. Make sure that you can now leverage Nutanix clusters on demand, leverage the power of a public cloud, but be consistent with your IT operations and tooling and so forth, right? Make it look like another cluster, just happens to be not in your data center, right? What about the other use case where you now have an existing set of AWS VPCs or AWS services already deployed? How does the Nutanix cluster look like it's fused in with the AWS fabric?
Yeah, so when I talk to customers, a lot of them are dealing with complicated apps, right? Apps that have many components, and it's very hard to migrate all of that to the cloud. It's like, it's a hairy app, right? It's something, hairier than your hair sometimes.
Keep going, man.
And then if imagine pulling your hair between on-prem and cloud, it's going to be painful. You'll end up like Dheeraj pretty soon. So we came up with a way to ease your pain, right?
Okay.
So instead of taking the hairy app and splitting up into pieces, one stays in the cloud, one on-prem, and the latency is high, app doesn't work, let's move the entire app to the cloud, right? So to show that, I have another setup. Now, this is a pure cloud setup. all right? So this is Prism Central running in the cloud. Now, one place I would like to draw your attention, this DNS name of Prism Central out there. This is exposed by AWS using ELB. So Prism Central is a VM running on Nutanix on AWS. The way we have done networking is that these VMs have IP addresses that are native in AWS. So all the AWS networking services that are available can be used with these. So not just Prism, any app, any workload that you have can use that.
While Binny is logging, what he's showing you, just so that you guys understand, is my existing services that I've deployed on AWS EC2 natively now access, as if they were on the same subnet, same VPC, the Nutanix cluster services, by the way, right?
Yeah. So I took an app that I was running on premises, and it was a 3-tier app. Let me show it through the COM console. These are the services that are running there. There are 3 tiers. There's a database tier, MySQL, WordPress, and HA proxy. I moved that to run in the cloud. Okay, COM can do that. But one thing to note is MySQL still running on Nutanix because we need the data services and all the benefits of data. WordPress and HA proxy are running in AWS. All 3 are running in the same account, using the same credits, same VPCs. Now I want to show you what's the benefit of natively integrating in the networking stack, right? So MySQL here, let me log in to the MySQL VM. MySQL is running on Nutanix. I'm looking for the console of MySQL, right? So here's MySQL, and I would like to run an iperf test. So this iperf test is targeting from MySQL the WordPress VM. If you look at the IP address that I've used, this is an AWS native internal IP address, right? And as you can see, the performance that I've got is 16 gigabit per second. This is native speeds in AWS. That's unprecedented.
Awesome, man. So look at that. That's like native networking speeds between your Amazon services and your Nutanix services together.
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool.
Great stuff.
Thank you, Sunil.
Good stuff.